Welcome to the Trail Blood Podcast.
I see how this night's gonna start.
Take two.
Let me start even though we're recording.
Here you
Welcome
go.
to the Trail Blood Podcast. I am your host, right? Christian Priest.
I'm Lionel Chapman. Ira Childs.
And today's episode, we got a very special guest, John Iceberg, filmmaker, creator, and writer, director, editor, right?
Oh yeah. Producer, cinematographer.
That we are going to discuss with him called Final Summer.
Yes.
So, John, welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate the trio of horror. You got the trio of cool posters behind you too on the wall there. So I got my Nightmare on Elm Street shirt going on here. So I represent.
Yeah.
So, thanks for having
me. Yes,
cool.
Sir.
Yeah.
So can you tell the audience a little about yourself, sir?
Sure. Yeah. So I've been kind of I got interested in film back in like middle school, really, and then I moved to a small town. I grew up in Aurora, Illinois. I moved to a small town called Elburn, which was like way in the middle of nowhere, far west suburbs of Chicago. Didn't have a lot of friends, but I had two friends that one guy had like a video camera, and the other had like tons of comic books. And so we would just kind of get together on weekends and start making movies together. And then as we got into high school, in speech class, we would just make videos to show in class, and then that turned into making videos for every class instead of doing homework and reports and stuff like that. But I just love movies. I always love movies. And but most of my I went to film school at SIU, but then I dropped out after a semester. And then most of my 20s I was playing in bands. I was in the Army for a little while, and then I went and taught middle school, and it really wasn't until I would say 2014 a film came to town, and I interned on it as a grip in the grip department, and I just totally loved it, and I just wanted to do whatever I could to like learn more about it. I was kind of hooked from that experience. So a lot of the people I work with, they worked on a lot of the Chicago Fire shows, like Chicago Fire, Chicago Med, all those kinds of things, and so it was a great experience. Just great mentors. And then I just found, I bought like a Canon T3i camera, and I just started shooting constantly, and then one thing led to another. And then I got like a Black Magic, like one of those 2.5K, like the lunchbox, like looking like cinema camera. And it just kind of spiraled from there. And then there's a studio down here called Shatterglass Studios. And I started working on a lot of commercials with them. And then I just kind of got to where I wanted to just do it all the time. And so I started this like film workshop in the back of the studio, for like college, non-traditional students. So we would just go in there. It was supposed to be like once a month. And then it turned out we were just there like every Wednesday, and it was only supposed to be like maybe 2 hours. And we'd get there at 5. Sometimes we wouldn't leave till like 10 or 11, because we were just, every week doing it, and I think that helped, because a lot of what we did in that really kind of paved the way for eventually Final Summer, so, but so that's kind of
what is the story?
Nutshell. So yeah.
I want to ask you, when did you love for horror?
I'm sorry, say again?
Yeah. When did you start to fall in love with horror? When did that happen?
It was like pretty early on. I grew up in Aurora in the 80s. I had a buddy who lived across the street from me, this kid Josh, and he had HBO. I wasn't allowed to watch. We didn't have cable or anything like that. So, but he had HBO, and I remember one time we went over, and they were watching a movie called Poltergeist. I didn't really know anything about it, and it was pretty scary up until the clown showed up. And then at that point, it was like terrifying, dude. I was like, I watched it from the back of, the couch. After a while, I poked my head up every now and then, and the clown would come out. I'm like, nope, I'm just going back down. That scared the hell out of me. And then, because I had a Bozo the Clown doll at home as well. And I remember I went home that night, and it just was like sitting there looking at me. I'm like, oh no. So I remember like I threw it in a bag, put a lock on it. I locked it in this like big like trunk my dad had, and we didn't have a key for it, so my dad got mad at me because I basically like locked this thing in there. And but I just kind of always loved horror. I had I had some older cousins who worked in video stores in the 80s, and I'd go to their house and they'd always be talking about like who'd win in a fight between Jason or Freddy, you know. And so I just kind of grew up on that stuff, and it was always, and then like listening to them talk about Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th or all the other movies, you know. And I don't know, just something about it. And then there was a movie called Trilogy of Terror that was like made for TV with like, you ever seen that Trilogy of Terror?
Yes.
Like the little doll that's like running around. Oh, I can't.
Yeah.
I hate like anytime there's like a horror movie with like little things in it, I just can't. It's like, no, I just want to kick them. You know, I hate that stupid. But I just, you know, and it's funny because like my parents were pretty conservative, and you know, we went to church, and so I wasn't really allowed to watch horror movies. In fact, I used to like at the library in my elementary school, there was like these books on like old Universal horror movies.
Yeah.
And I would like take the book home and smuggle it under my jacket, you know, and so I could continue to read. But my mom would find them, and she'd like, I'd go into my room and they'd be like sitting on the top of my bed like they were like porn or something. I'm like, you know. But it's just, you know, I just love them. And then, you know, the thing with Friday the 13th that was interesting was I again, like going back to my friend Josh, you know, because I couldn't watch them. He would tell me about the movies, but you know, when you're like in second or third grade, it doesn't really make that much sense, you know. So he'd like tell me stuff. I'm like, what in the, okay, you know. I specifically remember him telling me about Halloween 2 and like some hot tub scene, and I'm like, okay. And then years later, I'm like, oh, this is the scene, okay. But I don't know. What about you guys? So what got you into horror?
Going to the movies, man. With my father. My father used to take me to the theater, you know, go see movies like The Monster Squad and
Yeah.
all that, you know. The
Well,
80s.
For me, my story is kind of similar to yours. I didn't have cable at home, so I used to have to go over to my grandma's. And I used to watch movies on Cinemax, Showtime,
Yeah.
Saturday night. So the bottom of the bottom B and C list movies, but they were so fun because they turned out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
Well,
me,
like,
when I was 4, and I was same, we didn't have like cable, so we had VHS. And my uncle used to work at a video cassette store for a movie, you know.
Yeah.
So he had George A. Romero's Day of the Dead.
Nice. Yeah.
I didn't want to go to bed, so he decided to quote unquote punish me and scared me. And I sat on his lap and I watched Day of the Dead, and it backfired on him. I got hooked.
Right. Oh man. Yeah.
My love for horror I fell in love. Then I got into all the other ones like Friday the 13th. He used to have a poster in his room. I think I need to find a picture.
Yeah.
He posing like Freddy with like that by the
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember like a friend of mine, this kid Kelly, it was probably like 84, 85 or something, but I remember going to his house and we watched because again, he had HBO, and we watched what is it? April Fool's Day, if you ever seen that one. It's like a slasher, but it's kind of also, I don't want to give away because April Fool's base, I mean, you know, but it's a pretty fun one too. But I just remember like this is so
Amy
kinda
Steele
weird.
was in there. She was in Friday the 13th Part 2.
That's right. Yeah. Oh yeah. She was like the final girl. And then I think what's her name? Muffy St. Clair, whatever her name is. She was in Valley Girl too, I think. But
You know, I haven't seen April Fool's Day yet.
oh yeah. It's kind of fun. It's definitely like, oh yeah, because it's got like a bunch of people from a Biff from Back to the Future's in it too. I think he's one of the you know, I would say counselors, but they're just like the teens. And then you know, it's funny because I remember like, grew up in the suburbs of Chicago because we had like Channel 32, which was like WFLD, and then there was like Superstation 66, I think. And Saturday nights they would have like the really bad, like you're talking about those 60s and 70s movies.
Yeah.
And I finally got like my first TV was like this big old black and white TV, and like at 10 o'clock at night, my parents would go to sleep. I'd get on there, and you'd find like the channel that was kind of like this, and it was something like the Snake People or something like that. But no, it's just I don't know. I think it's just because it's like, I wonder sometimes because like with I have kids and I'm like trying to encourage them if they have interest, because I feel like if I don't encourage them or I forbid them from doing something, they might just end up doing that.
That's always
I
happening.
feel like they're probably like, you can't watch horror movies. And so my mom came to see our film play at like a drive-in, and we just kind of had a good laugh about just growing up, and you can't watch this because we couldn't even wear like I wasn't allowed to wear like a scary costume for Halloween forever either. So it was kind of you, sorry.
No, how are they today now? How do they feel?
Oh, they're good.
Making horror films?
I think they're good. I think if anything, they see just like how hard it is and how difficult it is to make film, and I think just film is kind of I did bands for a long time, and we would be on tour, and I had a video on like MTV and stuff when I was in bands, and we had records and songs on the radio, but it never really went anywhere. And I feel like film is something where like it kind of kept opening doors, I think, and they could see how hard it was. So I think that they really kind of appreciated just, I don't know, it's just, I feel like it's just done so much for me. And part of the thing I love about film is you can't really do it alone. And you meet all these other filmmakers and you make connections. Like I'm talking to you guys, it's really cool. And I love to be able to share like a passion for things, where I felt like when I was in bands, it's like you're on a stage and people look at you and it's all fake, but that's why I like film. It's like, I don't know, just I could ramble for a while on that one.
No. We totally understand, because you're right. Film is a collaborative thing. Plus, they last forever too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Even the bad ones, they still have a place.
Right.
Even the bad ones, it's like, but dang, at least you got it. Sucks, but it's still, people still like talk about it today. They're like, how suck that movie, how suck it was, man, it was garbage.
Right.
But still to this day.
Right. Well, I remember there's a local like video store in Champaign called like discount discs or something like that. But I remember like I was in there and I looked up and I saw a poster from like Night of the Living Dead, and I was just like, man, like that's staying power. That's the power I think of, like, because today I was like, what is it about? What makes a film a cult film? And so I was asking people about that, and I just felt like Night of the Living Dead came out in like 1968. It's almost like 50 years old. It's kind of wild to think about like making a film that lasts forever. It's incredible. So
what I love about that film, even when the remake came, George made a statement too, that you don't really need to be in Hollywood to do this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
He was always about.
Yeah, that's
George has a real, like, the roots of him come from independent filmmaking.
Oh, totally. It's funny because I feel like with our film, we looked at, because like you're saying, like we weren't in like LA or New York or Atlanta or Chicago. We were just way out here in the middle of nowhere, basically. So I tried to always just look at films that were made kind of just like almost an anomaly in the middle of nowhere. And so Night of the Living Dead was a huge influence for me, just in terms of the production. But then also I looked at like how Tobe Hooper made Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because I mean, basically like that was filmed like about 30 minutes outside of Austin, where he was from. And then he recruited a lot of actors and crew from like UT Austin. And so that was kind of like what I did, was I tried to like, okay, like how did they do their film? Let's try to do that too. Because, we just didn't have the money to get like names and, crew. So I had to teach everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody in our film was pretty much like from our workshop. It was kind of wild, but sorry.
So
Anyway.
let me ask you a question.
Sure.
How long did it take to film this film?
Let's see. We were at the camp, I would say, for about 3 weeks. And I think we were like 4 on, 1 day off, 5 on, 1 day off, and then 4 day on again. So I think it was about 13 days total of filming for the kind of main part. And then because it was COVID, like basically like the first 13 pages of the script I chopped because it had a lot to do with like the original opening was like where the main camp counselor and this other guy are like walking with the kids through the forest on this path or whatever, and then the kid is kind of bullied as they're taking a water break, and then they're going to catch up, and the kid, like, they grab this kid's scarf and like throw it off, and it kind of goes and drifts onto the edge of this cliff, and that's how this one thing happens. But because it was COVID and kids weren't able to be vaccinated, I'm like, well, I don't want to put a bunch of kids together if they can't, just for safety and everything too. And so I was like, all right, let's just drop the first 10 pages. But I always felt like when we got to the edit of it, I'm like, it needs that opening kind of kill thing. And so I was like, all right. But by that point, it was like winter. And so when we shot the opening sequence, it was like 10 degrees out. It was so cold. Oh my God. It was and then it snowed the day before. So I was like really excited because I was thinking like, oh man, this is great. We're gonna have like blood on the snow. This is gonna be so awesome. Because I want to see like, like the scene where like they're looking for their friend and they see the blood trail in the snow. And I was like, oh, and then the flashlight goes up like that. But we get there and all the snow was gone. I'm like, what the hell? Like I'm like, dude, it's 10 degrees. How does snow melt? I was really bummed
So
about that.
the inspiration come for the mask for your antagonist.
Oh yeah. It's funny. I was looking for, because I kind of because I love 80s horror, because I feel like you got Michael Myers mask behind you on the couch, and I think there's just something, because I've seen like a ton of slasher films, and I feel like the ones that really do it well is where they do a very simple mask. It's like something that's like simple and iconic, that's not crazy, because then you have all these other films where you're like, the mask is so crazy. And so I was like, well, I want to go for like a skull mask. But it was so hard to find a skull mask that was simple, because they always have like crazy smiles, or like it's this big latex thing that doesn't fit. And I saw this one online that just stood out to me. I tried to like talk to mask makers, but it's always like $5,000 to make, I'm like, I don't have, $500 right now. So like, and I just found this one online, and I went back to how Wes Craven was talking about with Scream, with the what is it, what do you call it, that thing, how it's like it just kept calling to him, and so finally one day I'm like, all right, I'm gonna order it online, because it was like $12, and it came, and I did some like test shots of myself with the mask on, basically kind of like emulating that shot from Halloween where like Michael comes out into the door frame behind her,
Yeah.
And I was sold at that point, because it just looked so creepy. I'm like, all right.
It was perfect for the setting too.
Oh yeah, right. Well, I think that's the thing about it too, is like with a little bit of a whodunit, like you could kind of feasibly think about like someone stashing that mask in a pocket or something, versus versus like a big old latex mask where you're like, well, obviously, like he couldn't hide Michael Myers in his back pocket, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, what do you got there, and like, oh, he's the killer, I'm running, but like last night I watched this movie called You Might Be the Killer. Have you seen that one?
No, I haven't seen that one.
It's interesting. They kind of took like that Jim Carrey movie, The Mask, with like Friday the 13th, and it was interesting. But
Okay.
I don't know. I feel like The Mask is such a key to the film, because how it is, like all these the horror movies, the killer should look iconic, you know, where I feel like when you see him, like, you know, right away, like that movie, like
Yeah.
Jason, Friday 13th, Halloween, Michael, like it's just there. And so thankfully the company was really helpful, and I don't think that they thought we were going to do anything at all. So,
Yeah.
so like,
Well,
yeah, whatever, here you go. I'm like,
we watched the film and we noticed that the woman in that who owns the camp, I was like, you can tell was Friday the 13th.
oh, totally.
She
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
reminding me of
Mrs. Voorhees.
Oh yeah, big time.
That was great.
Well, in the original, because we shot we shot a sizzle reel trailer for it like the summer before we shot the film, and I had her dressed up in like this cable knit sweater, so she
Nice,
looked even
nice.
more like her, you know. But I think we were so busy when we went to shoot the film, she showed up in this blue stripe thing. I'm like, whatever, you're good. Let's just shoot it, you know, like. But no, I always liked. Yeah, I don't know. Just something about like. What is your favorite? What is your guys' favorite slasher franchise / movie?
Favorite slasher?
Mine's is mine's is A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Me? Child's Play.
Child's Play. All right.
I got to go with Halloween.
Halloween. Yeah, I think that's probably my favorite too. Although it's tough because now you bring up Nightmare on Elm Street, and I'm like, oh, that's so good, man. It's so. Did you see? There's a thing called The Movies That Made Us at all? Have you seen that?
Yes, we watched that. We actually had a conversation about it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love the one about Nightmare on Elm Street because I feel like that resonated the most with me, because even though like there was one about Friday the 13th, I felt like, well, they had all this money going in, we didn't, you know. And there was like people weren't sure when they were going to get paid. I'm like, oh, I can totally relate to that. And so and I love the indie spirit, I think, of Nightmare on Elm Street so much, you know, versus and then even with Halloween too, although they had much more money, and I always felt like they were more in the industry.
More independent.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
350,000.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I don't think they had a distribution deal either. They had
Yeah,
no.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. What's his name?
Yeah, because there's like Irwin Yablon.
Akkad. Who's
Oh yeah,
yeah. The whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when Nightmare on Elm Street, they had no money.
Right.
Smart Egg invested along with New Line. Well, New Line was Bob Shea, but it was Smart Egg, somebody else. Well, I think one of them pulled the money out.
Yeah.
And I think one of the DPs or one of the guys on the crew was like, just before they're about to shoot, he was like, "Don't worry, I used my credit card to pay for the crew."
Oh yeah.
Shoot, no, we came this too far, but
right.
Even said it like Bob Nels was like bleeding from the stress.
Oh yeah.
Bob Shea said, "It's one thing making a film." He said, "You don't know what the pain, aching, and stress to go to raise money."
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, because we had something interesting happen with us. Was kind of early on, I somehow met this guy who was kind of in LA film industry, who was a producer on other shows. And I don't really blame him at all. I don't think it was really his fault what happened, but he, you know, I had pitched him on some other ideas before for some kind of like true crime series and some other stuff. And then like a kind of this ghost hunter doc I was working on.
Mm-hmm.
And then one time we were talking, and he just mentioned that he was EPing on like a horror film. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize you do like narrative stuff. I thought he did mainly like scripted series or unscripted series and stuff. But he's like, oh yeah, I got, you know, I do that. I'm like, oh, and so I was like, well, actually, I'm working on this film right now that we're going to be shooting, and I'm kind of looking for, you know, some additional help or something. And so I pitched him on it, and then the more I talked to him, the more he's like, wow, this is a pretty good idea. And so he's like, well, I got these guys. I think they, you know, they're looking to invest and kind of grow as a production company. And so maybe they'd be down. And so we met with them, And then they were like, yeah, you know, this sounds really great. I think there's a lot of potential there. I'd love to invest. And they're like, all right, we'll give you like 50 grand or something to throw in. I'm like, I'm just thinking like, this is, as someone who has only shot like, you know, things for very little, like that just seemed like someone just gave me like $1 million or something. So I was like, oh my God, this is crazy that someone is believing in our project enough to give money into it. It was insane. And so that was like 4 weeks before we were starting. They were like, all right, we're going to give you the money, da, 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 da. And then as we kept going, it was like, oh, they're working on the legal. Oh, we're going to get back to you about the legal. Oh, it's taking a little bit of time. It takes a lot of time, you know, kind of thing. Finally, like 4 days before we were about to shoot, they sent me the legal paperwork, and they're like, all right, it's going to seem a little scary at first because, you know, but don't worry. And I started reading it, and there was 2 forms. One was a chain of title that established that I was like the 100% owner of this whole thing. And the other was this form called a copyright mortgage form. And they were talking about it like as a completion bond, because they're like, oh, you know, in case, you know, you run, because they were telling me like, oh, you know, like, you know, in case you run off with the money or something like that. I'm like, what? Where am I going to go? I live here, and like my kids are here, and like you're giving me money to make my dream happen. I'm like, I'm not gonna like run out the door to go to Vegas. Like this is be the stupidest thing ever, you know. So as I was looking at it, I'm like, you got like the form was basically, it was almost like a bill of sale. One form was establishing I was the principal owner, and the other one was transferring everything to them, like IP and everything. And they were going to register with the U.S. Copyright Office. I'm like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen.
It's like your stuff is already registered with the United States.
I know. And it was like, I'm like, you guys pulled this stuff 4 days before we started. And the thing that really made me want to be like, all right, screw you guys, was like, I remember asking, like, are you guys talking about completion bond? Because that's not what this is. And their lawyer like jumped on. She's like, no, that's not, and we know you don't have one. I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't realize we were going to be like that. All right, then. Well, in that case, you know, screw you guys, and you know, nice seeing you.
Yeah, then he ain't those people that you posted to. I saw the email that you posted on Facebook.
Dude, yeah.
Investigation for scamming.
Yeah, that guy was scamming people. Like he had this fraudulent like gold sales that was going on. He scammed like all these like people who are like in retirement, senior citizens out of like $67 million. I don't know if he was ever actually serious, but because I saw an article where he had a 3-year, 10-picture, $100 million deal with Netflix. But I don't know if that's true, you know, because I saw it in the papers. It's supposedly true, but kind of, again, going back to like what Final Summer was about, was that I was with somebody who was kind of like that. It was like a pathological liar, a narcissistic sociopath. And so much of what I saw, you know, beyond all the emotional and psychological abuse, was like, made you question everything all the time. And so I wanted to take that, not to slide conveniently into Final Summer, but I wanted to take a lot of my experience and put it into this film. And so, you know, just there's things about it that when you're watching, you're like, what is that? Or I don't get that, or just this, that, and the other thing. And there's pieces of this puzzle that you're kind of seeing throughout the film that don't always add up, but they're kind of like pieces of this, like if the villain was to win,
yeah,
these are all the things that they would use as like props in their story, basically. So I've been rambling for a while. Sorry to talk you guys to death there, but
No, not at all.
That's what we hear. Talk about the movie.
One thing I wanted to say though was, you mentioned Night of the Living Dead, and you mentioned The Mask, but we haven't talked about the poster. The poster is badass. Poster is badass. What's your inspiration for the poster?
Oh yeah, so we had 2 posters. The first one was the girl floating in the river of blood with holding an axe, and that was the first image I ever had of the movie. Because before I ever thought of anything, all I could think of was like, this cool shot where it's like cameras overhead looking at a river, and just this canoe floats the frame with like a girl like in an axe, clutching an axe, like at the bottom of a canoe. I just thought that was so cool. And then I thought of like, okay, going back to the poster, the thing that I was talking about with some people, it's like, what is it about these films that we keep coming back to, right? So like with Nightmare on Elm Street, what is it about that? And I go back to like the poster from Nightmare on Elm Street 3, right?
Oh, you said 3? Okay.
Oh yeah, like Dream Warriors. Oh yeah, and that one too, right? And but it's specifically like if you go to the poster for Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, that's like such an iconic image.
Yeah.
Or like, and so I saw this guy Creepy Duck. He did this poster for Halloween Ends that I just totally loved. I was like, man, because I like the first poster a lot, but seeing his work, I was like, that's exactly like what I want to do. And I felt like, excuse me, like with our, again, going back to like, why do we keep going back to these films? And there's like this kind of the iconography and the visual language of these films where you see the mask, like the Jason mask, and you're like, yes, you know what I mean? Even if the films aren't always that good, you know, part 7 or whatever, but like, you know,
It
but
gives
it's
the
like,
antagonist that character.
oh
that
yeah,
put
yeah.
substance, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and the posters, I feel like they make you feel an emotion, I think, of like nostalgia and the love of those films. And so I was like, we got to have the killer on it. So I talked to, so we actually talked a lot about um how those posters made us feel, and I sent them a bunch of like posters that I really liked. There was one called Alone in the Dark, where it's like in the foreground the guy's holding the axe, and you see the in the distance, I think it was like this early 80s with like Jack Palance.
Mhm.
And then so we ended up going into the back of Shatterglass. That's actually like me under the mask, because I couldn't afford to get anybody down here to pay for them to like, you know, because I was just so broke at the time. So my friend Chad, we went, because I sent him a bunch of stills from the movie, but he was like, I need like a high res thing. So I'm like, all right, fine, we'll just go shoot it on a green screen. And we shot like 20 different shots of like various, like somewhere it's like he's kind of coming in with the axe. Like I want to do like almost like a 3D one where he's like swinging the axe and the glass is shattering. And then finally, I remember I was like, oh, you know, it'd be cool. And I did this turnaround thing because it was like that Boomhouse poster for The Town That Dreaded Sundown. If you ever seen that movie, and I was like, oh yeah, let's do one where he's like, it's like Town That Dreaded, you know. So that was the one that he chose. So he chose the image, but it was just when I saw it, I was like, yo.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and it's pretty badass.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. And it's just I think it's just that's the thing I go back to was it's the sometimes the film itself is like it's like the emotion that it conjures when you look at the images or you see the poster for Friday the 13th Part 2, you know, all those things, you know, or final chapter when it's like the mask and the pool of blood right there, and you're like,
Mhm.
it's, you know, it's so cool. I just you know, yeah, or just even the Halloween font, you know.
I mean,
So before we dig in
Yeah.
a little bit further, I just want to kind of read to everyone what the story of Final Summer is. It says in 1991, Camp Silver Lake opened for the final time. In the wake of a tragedy during the summer of 1991, a group of camp counselors find themselves fighting for their lives against the masked killer. And then you look at the first poster and you like, yes, I got to go see this movie. Yes, I got to see this movie. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So,
Right.
Shut up, take my money.
right, right.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, it's when you're an indie film, I feel like you gotta use everything you can, you know, get them to watch it, you know. So
Yeah.
I do have a question.
yep.
Speaking of Friday the 13th, one of my favorite Friday the 13th of the franchise is Part 6. And it's an iconic character who's also played another iconic character in The Return of the Living Dead, the one and only Tom Matthews. How in the HE hockey sticks did you land Tom Matthews?
Yeah, it was a lot of it was tough, you know. Well, because
How was he to work with?
Oh, he's awesome. He's really great. I really like working with him a lot. Yeah, we didn't have him on set too long. I would have, the lesson I've learned from that is like put someone like that more in your movie. So I would have shot like every possible scene I could with him, but I think I was so nervous and under so much pressure that I was like, but he was really great to work with. I liked, he had a film vocabulary that I really like a lot. And so like when he would talk about, oh, what do you think about this? I'm like, oh yeah, because I love getting into that stuff too with people. I love thinking about shots and, oh, what if you do this? Or how about if I walk over there, if I lean forward or lean back, those kinds of things. But it was interesting because I went through a lot of because I felt like, okay, we got to get somebody in the film to watch, and so originally we reached out to a bunch of different people. I went to Kane Hodder first, actually,
Ooh.
and I would have got him if I would have had more money.
Oh, okay.
But I had like almost no money, so I was like, okay, fine. But I think his agent just wanted too much, and I was like, yeah, and the paradox of indie filmmaking is typically like you can't get anybody because you've never made a film before when it's your first film.
Yeah.
So and then to get into down the road for distribution, it's like they're always like, oh, you need like one more famous person. I'm like, yeah, but I wasn't gonna get one anyway. So eventually I found so I talked to Kane Hodder's agent, but he wasn't able to be in. She actually came down a little bit to kind of meet me halfway, but it was still like way too much. I was like, thank you very much. And that would have been really cool too. But because actually one of the characters in the film is based on him, actually is written for him. So I don't know if you've seen his documentary about like his whole story at all.
No,
No,
Kane
no, no.
Hodder's? No.
Yeah, there's a really good documentary about him, and he talked about like early on in his stunt career, he got burned really badly. And so he ended up having a lot of PTSD from that. And so the character at the end of the movie in the hospital is basically him. I wrote that for him. But so that was kind of the inspiration for that, just because when I saw the documentary, because like I have PTSD and I saw him talking about his PTSD, and I just felt like it would be a really kind of cool homage and tribute to him as also someone who's been through that. But anyway, and then I reached out to other people like Craig Thomas, who was in Friday 13th Part 7. And he liked the script, but he was like, I can't do this right now or something like that. But he gave me a lot of good feedback. And then finally I got Neil Affleck from the original My Bloody Valentine. I was like, oh, this is awesome. But COVID complicated that. And then there was like the visa thing. And then I'm like, Tom Matthews is pretty awesome. And I kind of did that thing where like, you kind of want to look for actors who maybe haven't been in films in a while. Like there's that Mark Duplass South by Southwest keynote speech where he talks about like find the actor who maybe is either sick of doing the same thing or just hasn't done stuff for a while. And so I reached out to him, and thankfully he actually talked to me. We met on Zoom. I was like, this is crazy. And then he's like, yeah, I'll do it. I'm like, holy crap, like, okay, and it was like, to me, as like someone who like, sorry, 1 second. As someone who is a fan of his and is a fan of the Friday films, I felt like, wow, that's pretty awesome. This guy was like, like he beat Jason, in the Friday movies. That's pretty awesome, And I think the interesting thing is, as a horror fan, that's like you guys are mentioning, it's like the Tom Matthews. But distributors, they're like, they might look at somebody like that, like, there's nobody in your film. I'm like, you just don't understand horror then, dude. because I got like the freaking hero, And so I thought I wanted his character to come in and be someone who was almost like Tommy Lee Jones in No Country for Old Men.
Okay.
So like originally so kind of the end scene was supposed to be kind of, we were just losing light so fast though. By the end of the day, it was like we had no light. It was all like, it was golden hour fading real fast in a blue hour, but it was meant to be kind of like that scene in No Country for Old Men where he goes to the motel and he's about to open the door and he's not sure if he's on the other side. And so that was kind of a bit of an homage to that scene for the end of the movie. I was gonna do a little bit more, but we were like, the light was gone at that point. It was just gonna look like crap. But he was really cool. And then yeah, so but if we do a sequel, I would have him. He already said he would come back, and I want to make his role bigger. And so it's like more central to the role. So there'll be some interesting things there. But anyway,
You answered my question. So
sorry.
I'm
I'll
like,
get talking, man. I'll get talking.
got this.
So recently, because I follow you,
Yeah.
all that you all won best cinematography.
Oh yeah.
So when we watched this film, I was like, holy cow. I see why they won the cinematography.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
The shots in this film were amazing.
Oh, thank you.
We all agreed that they were. How did the prepping of those how long did it take you guys to prep those shots and like
Oh
that?
yeah. So like we would do actually like with my workshop, and the cool thing about it is, we trained as a crew together over the years, and when movies would come to Champaign, I would try to get them on shoot so they could understand how hard it is to work on a set. I was on a movie real briefly called Slice. It was like the first A24 direct to streaming film with like Chance the Rapper and Joe Keery.
Okay.
And we were shooting in Joliet, and I remember my first night, I was like, this sucks. It's so hard because I remember specifically it was the scene that ended up being the teaser for the film, where you see the guy roll up on the moped and he's looking at the sign while I'm down the road trying to spill light onto the top of the road, and this key grip comes and yells at me about like, why aren't you spilling on the trees? So I would like spill on the trees, and then the gaffer come back and yell at me about, why aren't you spilling on the road? I'm like, oh my God, make up your damn mind. So I was like, because it's not night shoots are so tough, I wanted to train everybody in understanding like lighting, especially lighting at night, communicating. So I went to the camp like months in advance to kind of figure out how to shoot the film, because like you think it's like one location, but a camp is big, so there's like 85 different locations. And so so we kind of came up with like, I would look at the first season of Stranger Things and how they did their night lighting, and I could see like patterns start to emerge. Like, okay, background of the shot, they always like close light or front light the deep background, and then middle of the shot, excuse me, they would spill light on the ground. And then your hero set over here off to the side, it was always soft bounced light, and so that's what I trained everybody to like, all right, let's just think about this like this. And so so we would do like nighttime lighting exercises. We went to a forest in Champaign. For this other guy, I felt bad because I was already under a lot of stress. I probably shouldn't have taken on. And we did this night lighting thing for a short film, and I kind of freaked out on him because he wasn't like prepped. And so I'm like, you got to do the prep because And I was, I chilled out a bit since then, but it was good for us all to see how important knowing all those things is, because that first night that we did, it's actually the scene where Lexi is walking to that, she's walking through the forest by herself, and she goes to that clearing, and there's like that little kind of building there or whatever with their flashlight. That was the first night we did night lighting, and it was a total madhouse. It was like because I would have lighting diagrams and stuff like this plan. Here's all the lights, here's all the symbols. Take a photo of it on your iPhone so you guys know how to do this stuff. And that first night, I think everybody was like, the first night that we did night lighting, I think everybody was like, this is huge what we're trying to do here. Like like the scale was crazy. And so I think just over time we got much better at figuring out how to like repurpose our lights. So like, like there's a bridge scene, and then we're in the ravine, so we would like light for the bridge, and then we just swing our lights, and then we'd be down there, and so it's just stuff like that. And then my crew kind of got used to knowing like I always like some bounce, so they'd always bring like a big 2x4 4x4 like bounce along, so we could get a little bit of like soft fill. Like I love Bob Richardson does this. If you've seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, when the killers are walking up to get him, you can see that they have this real beautiful, like soft light on their face. And I just love that stuff. So we would,
Yeah.
but I love cinematography. So it's just, but the crew was great, you know, and it was our first time shooting on anamorphic lenses, which was stressful. Because like at about a 4, they're nice and cinematic looking. Anything under 4 and they get really soft.
I mean, it paid off.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. I mean, the one thing I like about, because I wanted it to feel like a long lost horror franchise film from the 80s. And I think a lot of modern films are so overly sharp to where it's like you see every last pore on someone's face. And I feel like as a throwback slasher, you can't shoot like that. You have to make it feel like it's something that's like straight out of the 80s, you know. And so it was fun. It was funny. We played opposite She Came from the Woods at Popcorn Frights, which just is premiering this weekend at AMC. And I remember like they shot like real crisp and like it was like 8K, you know, like super crisp. And ours was soft and 80s, and everybody's like, this is blurry. I'm like, it's not blurry, dude. It's just it's got the look, you know. Anyway.
That's the 80s films. Like,
Oh yeah.
y'all new generation, y'all need to
Right. Yeah. You gotta go back to the hits, you know, and then
real art of filmmaking is
yeah.
Right.
But no, it's just fun. I think it goes back to like why I like horror, because the visual, the images are so iconic, you know. And my favorite was this one counselor is running up to fight the killer, and they're outside the dining hall, and the moon was like in the perfect place. We had this like full moon going on. I was like, yeah, I just remember we shot that thing. I was like, you gotta come check out this thing. So we were just standing, it was like the push, and as she goes up to the killer, like what do you, you know, like what do you want, or something like that, or whatever. And it's just this epic shot, and it was so much fun. Anyway.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, you have somebody that I worked with before in that film.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Seth.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like shooting with Seth.
Seth is awesome. He's kind of the unsung hero of the film in a way, because I met him early on, and I was kind of thinking of him for like the Peter character, you know, and so he was actually going to play Peter, but I just felt like he's just such a cool guy. And I feel like Peter's interesting characters. I feel like Peter is me, where I'm like a big, like I could, you know, it's like those characters who like they wish they could be cool, but they're just never cool.
Yeah.
They'll try to be cool, but they'll just fail at it all the time, you know. And I feel like all of us are like, it's like Ducky from Pretty in Pink or whatever, right? Like John Cryer's character, like he wishes he would get with like Molly Ringwald, but he's just always gonna be kind of that dude, you know. And I feel like Peter had to be like that John Cryer Pretty in Pink, like hopelessly never gonna be cool. And I felt like Seth was just to me, it was like more of like a Johnny Depp and Nightmare on Elm Street kind of thing, where he's just, you know. And so he really kind of took one for the team on this film.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was just like, dude, why you ain't run? You see your cap get hacked, and you didn't run. What the
right? Yeah. It was funny with that scene, because I remember someone was like, the guy just comes out of nowhere and starts in front of everybody. That feels hard to believe. And I was like, the point of that, to me, was the point of that scene where like the killer finally shows up. It's kind of like, it's like you got to scare everybody to believe that, like, I don't even care. I don't even want to solve the mystery. I'm not here for Scooby-Doo. I just want to get the hell out of here. So I feel like there's no better way to scare the hell out of everybody than to do that in front of everybody. So when he shows up and then whack, you know, I feel like everybody is so like shocked, you know, because I go back to you know, like my dad was a paramedic for a long time, and then you know, like I remember specifically like wandering into the aftermath of a fight one time, where it's like I went to SIU, and these 2 guys were being jumped by like 5 dudes, and we kind of walked up on them, and one guy was on the ground, head all bloody, and there was another guy standing over with a brick. And it was funny because like me and my friend Chick, who we were both in the army, and then my roommate was like a black belt in Taekwondo. Not that I cared because I just didn't know what was going on, but we just slowed down and we're kind of like looking at this weird situation, and took a minute or two to process. And so I felt like for this scene, it's like everybody's processing it, and it's so shocking that you're not just reacting, you're kind of frozen, because even like the Moose character, like Ricardo's character, he's like typically in horror films, I feel like like his character would be like the strong athlete who's there to fight the dude and get his head knocked off or something, like in part 8 of Jason Takes Manhattan or something. But I was like, I wanted everybody to feel real, and so in the aftermath of that scene, everybody's like flipping out, like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? Come on, and
I mean, it is real because it's like whoever said that, I would like all the mass shootings we had, people just go out in public to shoot. That is believable. It's no different from like your antagonist hacking up somebody in front of everybody.
Oh yeah, because I think that just
it's and it can't. It ain't no different. It's violence.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, totally. And I feel like to go to the psychology of it too, because the character is a narcissist, I feel like they would get off on that attention, and power that they would feel from that moment. So I think it's a pretty strong statement, I think, for a killer. Versus like people were like, like I go back to the original Friday the 13th, where it's like no one knows what's happening, ever until like the body goes flying through the window. You know what I mean? Like it's like she's making her coffee or tea, and you're like, I don't get it.
Was it intentional for your killer to take off running into the bushes after?
Oh yeah. He was,
like a hit and run.
Like, oh, like man, that's funny.
Dude, it was funny because when we shot that, he was just ran like just. But I think there was something that to me, it's like I wanted to scare the hell out of the audience too, because you have that great moment where it's like, okay, like everybody's running inside, like help me, they grab him, they run outside, and they're just in there looking at him, and it's like the smoke is kind of drifting across the frame, and then he just like looks towards where Lexi ran off to, and then just sprints. And I remember we were shooting that, everybody behind me was like, ugh. Like they got the chills from that, because it's like that dude's just running to get the plan going, it's but and thank God for Luzzo, because he was so great in that one. The thing that inspired me with this film was when I talked to Neil Affleck, he talked about the actor who played the killer in My Bloody Valentine. He had like a dance background, and I remember watching Friday the 13th Part 3 one night, and the part when he's like smashing all the boxes and tearing it up in the barn, I was like, his physicality was really interesting, because it was so like he was kind of like had this rage, and just made me think like, man. And so Luzzo, who played Under the Mask, he had a dance background too, and he'd done a lot of mask work, because I was like, you have to be really scary, and I want it to be where like, under the mask, you're thinking all the time. And so even if you're wearing a mask, I want you to feel like he's definitely thinking about some stuff, or even like as a narcissist, how can he make it more scary? Like in the kitchen scene, she goes in to hide, he comes in and he sees like the thing full of like silverware and just whips it. I thought that'd be fun, because it would be like kind of unsettling, like if you have, like when I was in the army, and I'd be scrubbing the dishes in the sink or whatever, and someone drops stuff, you're like, ugh, and so I thought it would be just another way for the killer to kind of get off on terrorizing them, so
now, power. As we was watching this film, we was debating whether the killer was a male or a woman, the way the mannerisms were. But it was a male, right?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I'm not going to say who.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was because I
Yeah.
want people to watch the film.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. That's
But
good.
yeah,
Yeah. No,
I
it's
knew it was this particular person. And I'm
right.
like, you know, something's not, you know,
Right.
sitting right with me. So I guess that would have been the obvious choice.
Right.
And I fell for your trap. So thank you very much.
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah. No, it was funny. Oh, so you did fall for that, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. Yes, it works. Because I feel like it's funny. I watched Prom Night that not that long ago. Have you seen Prom Night, the original?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jamie
And
Lee.
I was like, oh my God, like I had no idea how close our film kind of was to that film in a way. Because I'd seen it before, but there were moments when I watched it recently, I was like, okay, like that's not intentional, but holy cow. Like, and so it was funny because I know like we get the obvious like Friday 13th ripoff thing, but I feel like that's mainly because it's summer camp. I mean, obviously, like there's homage to it, I think, which is fine. But
Mhm.
when I saw Prom Night, I was like, wow, because there's the red herrings, and then there's the other stuff, and then there's the obviously the killer with the axe and the way it, so I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, no, yeah, trying to hide all of those things is funny. So like even our trailer, I had to hide like the entire third act, because it's like as soon as you're like, well, I can't show that. So,
Mhm.
Yeah.
you know.
One day.
So my friend was like, "Can you believe all the stuff they're seeing on YouTube?" I'm like, "Don't even read because you can't it's like I don't want to because I still like going to a movie not knowing everything about it and letting the things kind of reveal themselves and especially like and it's fun to watch it now with an audience, especially in the one scene where this person gets interrupted and kind of thing because to me like that is so it's I feel like it's so real to what that situation would really be, but it's and also it's fun to feel like the audience is so shocked by that, where they're like, whoa, like what? But I'm like, that's exactly what they would do. Like,
Yeah.
you just interrupted my narcissistic, speech. What the hell you do? Like, because I go back to I just watched the original Screen the other day.
I was about to say that.
Oh yeah, and I'm like, there's no way Billy wouldn't kill Stu at the end of the movie. I mean, he's the only one that could tie him to anything, So I feel like Stu was always going to be like, if it would have played out, I feel like Stu would have gotten killed.
Either that or he was going to be the fall guy.
Right. Oh, totally.
Because
Yeah.
he's it's like you just the dumb one.
Oh yeah. Because it's to go to like my personal experience with this stuff. It's like with this person I was with, like she kind of turned me into a boogeyman, and so I would be out places like long after I had escaped her, and people would be like pointing at me, talking about me. Apparently, I was emailing other people, which she would email other people as me, and it was just insane. It was super wild. So not to get too crazy into my stuff, but like
That's a
I
movie.
try to use.
I was about to say, hey, write that one.
Right
Oh yeah, and
Movies
that was like the least of the thing, but like and so that's why I kind of felt like I wanted to put those things into it, because for example the red herring kind of character, and to go to PTSD, like PTSD can look kind of scary sometimes, like when you're staring off into space or you're in that rage, but really it's just processing all the trauma and stuff. And so I wanted to have the character you think is really not it. And the reasoning for that is because they're always looking at this person from a specific point of view. Like he's scary. Did you see how he looks? He's whatever. But it's really just like trauma and PTSD and how it impacts you. Anyway, I'm rambling a lot here, so feel free.
No, we get what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right, copy that.
It's quite similar for my character and my film writing. Yes.
Yeah.
Something going on.
Yeah, I think it's good though to write what you know. Yeah,
But it's similar.
yeah. Well, I think we were talking. It's always good to write what you know, right? And unfortunately for me, I knew some crazy stuff.
Hey,
So I guess, you know, it's, but you know, I guess it's always good to, if you can take like trauma and do something positive with it, I think that's a cool thing. So anyway,
what's next? What's next for the final summer? Are you do you have a distribution deal locked in,
yeah.
or just gonna go?
So we've got a distributor, and we are planning on hitting streaming this summer. I'm kind of knocking on their door a lot about doing like a limited theatrical, because I'm seeing like all these other films. I'm like, come on, dude.
Mhm.
You know, I feel like now is the cool thing, you know, I looked at like, you know, obviously we don't have the gore factor of like Terrifier 2, but then I'm like, who would, you know? I mean, that movie is so, you know, but and then Skinamarink has that viral, you either love it or hate it, but it's a conversation. So that, but I feel like the things I love about those films is they're creating a opening for indie horror
Yeah,
to go into the theaters again. Because I feel like I love watching movies with the crowd. I love watching movies at the theater. I saw The Lost Boys not that long ago at the Virginia and Champaign. It was so much fun because it's like everybody's laughing at stuff. And I remember at the end of the movie, you know, when the grandpa and everybody's like, what? You know, I mean, I've seen it a million times, but I remember this one girl behind me is like, what? It was the funniest. She just kept saying that for like 2 more minutes. I'm like, yes, I know. They're all the vampires in Santa Carla. But anyway, but I
keeping it
just love
all
seeing,
along.
oh, I know. And even like one filmmaker I love with Jordan Peele with this film Us.
Yep.
I love, and I kind of did some references to it in our film with the Mario character, because I love the scene in Us when like the dad is in the boat, right? And he's fighting himself and he knocks himself into the water. And as an audience, you're like excited because you're like, yes, he wins. And then the boat went ahead and he falls into the water. I just love that stuff. And so there's one scene in the movie that's kind of a nod to Jordan Peele, where the Mario character is about to, you know, get his bat going with the killer
Yeah.
and swings it and misses, and then instantly goes straight back to being Mario again. Because I feel like, you know, it's one of my favorite moments. We were dying and laughing when we were shooting that because it's just so funny. But I wanted it to be again like a it's not like a horror comedy, I would say. It's like a horror that has some really funny real moments. Because I go like, you know, like if you go into haunted attractions, you know, where you're like walking around in the attraction, but you're waiting outside before you go in and you're talking to your friends and you're like, man, you're gonna freak out when you go into this. I'm not gonna freak out, man. No, not at all. And then the first person that jumps out at you, you're like, ah, and they just run over everybody to get out, like get it out of my way, you know, kind of thing. And so that's what I want to do with our film is have it always feel real to the character, you know. So
Mhm.
you know, so that's why I thought that the Mario scene, it's like, well, as soon as you swing, that's your moment of adrenaline, and then your adrenaline is gone. And then you're just back to fight or flight, you know. So it's anyway, that's funny. But yeah.
Well, congratulations on the distribution. Is
Thank you.
for the audience, where they when it comes out this summer, where streamings they can find it on?
That's that I think I would say that details for that are going to come probably about end of March, I would say. So I think next week, this our distributor is going to EFM, Berlin Ale for some sales. We've had like a couple of really good excuse me, offers so far, and hope to get it on Shutter and a few more other platforms. Sorry, like yeah, because I had a couple of movies I worked on. Revealer was one that's coming out, or that came out on Shutter last year, and so yeah, and then there's Screenbox too, like Tony Wash, who's with Bloody Bites, Bloody Disgusting, and Screenbox. They're really awesome. Yeah, it's, you know, it's tough right now because I feel like a lot of the streaming platforms. I don't know if you saw that stuff about AMC closing a lot of positions, and like Shutter was getting hit too, you know. So it's,
With Disney and all that.
oh
It's
yeah,
just, you know,
yeah,
they losing money.
right. and I think it's just an interesting time right now. And so I think like I've learned so much just in terms of distribution, like what that is. It's and I feel like making a film is so hard. There's like three impossible things basically. It's like in Top Gun Maverick when he's talking about like what is it, miracle number one or whatever, and then miracle number two. I feel
Yeah.
like miracle number one is finishing your film to where it actually gets out there. And then miracle number two is like finding distribution. But then the most impossible one, I think, is actually getting people to watch your film. So I feel like in a way it's been really successful, and I'm excited. And I'm excited just that the horror fans and the horror community are really kind of, I don't know, I couldn't have asked for a better kind of experience with meeting you guys and meeting all these other horror fans, because I'm a horror fan too. So I feel like it's fun. And I feel like they kind of sniff out the people who are like just doing it for money,
Yeah.
Like, you're just doing it you're just making that Winnie the Pooh movie for money, man. Come on.
Yeah.
Oh my
Come on.
God.
Like you don't really, no offense to Winnie the Pooh, but come on, dude.
Yeah. If you in it just for the money, it's not gonna work.
Yeah. I feel like if you love it, and that's why I love like, like when I go to a horror con, I remember we went to Scarefest in Lexington and I saw this sign and I was like, I gotta get that sign because it said like it was like a car sign that said like Strode Realty on it, from Halloween. And I'm like, dude, that's like a deep cut sign right there. That's like because it's in the movie, all of like one scene when like you see Mr. Strode say to Lori, like, all right, see you later, honey. I'll be at the office. And on the car it says like Strode Realty, and then you never see a sign ever again. And I just walked up to the dude. I'm like, that's a deep cut right there, man. That's so I got to get that sign. So it was, but I think that's horror fans love that stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Do collectibles.
oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So
Those.
what about
those
you guys? Like, what's
last
your
forever, too.
what's your kind of goal though? Like, what are you guys working on? Like your kind of projects?
We just wrapped up our film Herman. Right now we just submitted it to a couple festivals, so we're just
Kind of waiting.
waiting to hear from that, and
Nice.
currently working on two more short films, and then after those shorts, feature.
And Darcy Collins won Best Picture, horror picture
Yeah.
at Arkansas.
Yeah.
Oh wow, nice.
You know,
That's awesome. Which one in Arkansas was it?
MLC Awards
Okay, yeah,
out of Green Bay, but they had
Nice.
a gala in Arkansas.
yeah,
The final round of the judging and stuff like that.
nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, I hope you guys do, like wish you guys the best with all of your shorts and with the feature too. Like feel free to reach out anytime with I'll tell you all the terrible things I went through and I'll give you like some really good references. There's some really good books. There's one called the what is it? It's like I'll send you the links later, but they're really great stuff. It really I learned one I wish I would have read from when I started because everything in the book was true to what I experienced, So like from writing to prep to casting to production to post to festivals to distribution to everything. It was really good. But yeah, I think the coolest thing to me about like making films is like meeting the other filmmakers because we connected with so many people, and now I feel like I've got like producers for because I would love to do a sequel, and so that's kind of the goal. So I think this summer I'm going to be shooting the sizzle reel trailer for it, kind of like how we did before.
Okay.
And then I think basically right now I'm kind of reaching out to other producers and other kind of crew people and then other actors too, just to kind of feel out if they'd want to be involved because I'd love to get like
I do.
oh yeah, totally. All right, man.
Yeah, right here.
We'll be shooting down here actually. I think in Rantoul because I think the second one actually leaves the camp and continues on the plan basically because there's the whole thing is like one big plan that this person is trying to,
You need
this
me.
person
Yeah.
oh yeah is trying oh yeah for sure, so that'd be awesome. So I think 2024 is when I'm looking to probably start shooting that one, but
Nice.
I don't know, I just talked to like I know Tom's coming back, Bishop is coming back, and a couple other people I got my eye on, so we'll see. But yeah, man.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well,
Awesome.
cool. Well, best of luck to you guys. So
Yeah. Oh, can you tell the audience before you go, where can they find you?
Oh yeah, so if you're on Instagram, so we're on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Actually, TikTok has been insanely amazing for us. So at Final Summer Movie on all of those. So yeah. So and then just yeah, feel free to reach out anytime. You know, if and especially for like indie filmmakers out there like you guys, or people who are interested in shorts or want to learn more. I'm happy to just talk on all the crazy things that I went through making this film and share. Like, watch out for this distributor, or submit to this festival, or these people are cool, or never hire anybody named this.
Yeah.
Yeah, feel free anytime, guys. Totally. Yeah. So
Yes, and you can also find us on TikTok too at trio_of_blood, and on our Instagram, which is trio_horror, right? Underscore. Because we got so many.
lots of underscores.
_3_horror.
And where you'll be able to find this right on YouTube, search Trio of Blood podcast.
Yes.
Bam.
And
Yeah.
also on Facebook at Trio of Blood.
Awesome.
Type in that. We are also on that. And
Give us a like. Give us a star for a couple stars
On Spotify.
Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and iTunes.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys. You guys have a good night.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
and thank you once
Okay.
again. Tune
All right.
in for our next episode.
All right. Cool. Thanks, guys.